Hey everyone, John here, back with another video on our excavation mini-series. In this video, we will be talking about our quantity takeoffs as well as working up some rough numbers here for an estimate. But before we jump into that workflow, I want to just do a real quick overview here of kind of where we've been over the last 8 videos. It's been just a little while since we posted the last video, which was video 8. This is video 9 in the series, and so let's just do a quick recap of where we have come from. So first of all, I have a few saved 3D views here that kind of help walk us through the workflow. So our first step here was really going through and creating a site topo using the available information that we had. So that was kind of the beginning point. From there, we went through and started carving out essentially the demolition area that we would be actually going through and subtracting. So we spent some time here, essentially shaping the excavation. We also had gone through and done just a little bit of work to kind of subtract the basement areas that we anticipated from the existing buildings. And so that eventually gets us down here to our subgrade. So what we have here is, you can see our topo on top, which we're still using for cutting a lot of elements, specifically, the top grades. So we're still using this, but you can see that we have kind of a massing here, kind of built around our property lines. And you can see that within this massing, this is where we have our excavated subgrade, essentially. So we also went through and in one of these areas where we had some adjacent buildings, we had gone through and added just some real quick shoring along this line. And you can see here that we have our foundations coming in, we have basement walls, and then ultimately we went through and filled in the areas that would need a backfill. So you can see here that we have our backfill around our perimeter, as well as backfill in areas that are internal to our project, under the garage, under our slab on grade, to kind of fill in some of these areas that we had to slope down to get to our, to build up our foundations. And so that's kind of where we left off, was with our backfills. So now that we've built this all up, what I'd like to do is take a quick look here at our report for earthwork. So let's just start by taking a look at our scheme settings. So essentially, one of my typical approaches to putting together quantity takeoffs here. You can see, obviously, we're working in the CONTRABIM template, so we have a number of different reports. Our earthwork in this case is going to be division 31 based off our CSI codes. But here you can see that we are looking for anything that's being tagged with this general category for earthwork. And then we're also looking for anything that may be an earthwork material, or we're also looking for anything that's a wood shoring material. So those are just kind of two general materials that potentially could be part of another assembly that's not included in the earthwork code here, but these are just kind of generally the few criteria that we are working with, and based off that we should be able to get things to run. We also have here I can see that I'm excluding a roof tiles and coverings because I know that I had a few green roofs that may have contained earth as part of those assemblies or composites, so that's why we're excluding that one in this particular case. But we're also excluding some beam segments, column segments, which is really kind of a standard that we apply to pretty much all of these different reports, no matter what it is, just because beam segments and column segments just give us a lot of duplication in our quantity takeoffs. So, okay, so that is the criteria. Often, if there's some unique situations, I'll go through and make adjustments here to make sure that we're picking up everything we want. But besides that, you can see our listing of different properties here. Different parameters as well as properties. And we'll go through and talk about these a little bit more as we actually get into the takeoffs here. So yeah, that was really the workflow. Existing site, demo, subgrade, foundations, basement walls, backfill, and that really kind of brings us to the end of our earthwork kind of sequence there. So let's go ahead and fire up this earthwork report, and let's just see what we get. So we can see we have a few items here. We have a site grade. Now with this, let's just highlight in 3D. So you can see that that is kind of our main mesh here that is really acting as, you know, our site topo as well as our excavated mesh down below there. So in this case, that would be actually a good element to use as like a kind of just a general fine grading. So we can throw like maybe 50 cents a square foot or something in that range at it. We can see our total area here. So this would account for fine grading at the subgrade as well as on the site for any, you know, fine grade adjustments there. We have our site topo, which is the existing, and in this case, we're not necessarily going to be using this for any type of takeoffs. This was really set up just to help get our geometry right for our top surface. Okay, so there we go. We have that one, which we will run a little cost on. And then, of course, we have our excavation and fill here. So we can see we have a total of 516 cubic yards in this case. So we can highlight this. Okay, we can actually see that it's not necessarily turned on because we're on our plan status. So if we go to, let's see, like a existing plan, then we should be able to highlight this. So let's see. Okay, there we go. So this would be our kind of our mass, not a mass excavation, but just our basement excavation, which includes our sloping to get down. So so with this, we can see obviously we have our takeoffs. We have just kind of a general number here of $4 a cubic yard. With excavations, obviously there's a wide range of different pricing that we can include here, and there's a lot of different factors from, you know, the type of soil to the type of equipment to whether you are able to just store it on site and then move it back into place, or if you have to haul it off site. So there's a lot of different factors. It can range from a few dollars a cubic yards up to, you know, like $20 a cubic yard, depending on all those different factors there. So yeah, a lot of different things to consider here. We are just going to go, let's kind of go like a general $5 a cubic yard to start. And then same thing with our basement backfill. So we can see that we need to kind of change up our view here just as we're bouncing back and forth to be able to select all these. So let's grab them. We can isolate them here, and then you can really see that we have our perimeter, our backfill at our perimeter. We have internal backfill, which is really going to be like a structural backfill here because we have structural elements going in on top of it. So we have these structurals, and then yeah, so that's all the volumes there. We can see our total cubic yards here is 404. Quick note on, actually in the last video, I think we talked about how to add these in. By adding this little symbol here, actually let's see what happens when we turn that off. So by having that turned off, it's just going to total up our everything at the bottom. But by clicking this little flag icon here, it actually allows us to summarize by our headline or our grouping. And so that's how we can get these coming through. So to get our total export in this case, it would really just be a combination of these two, or a subtraction of our backfill from our excavation and fill. And then we can see that, so those are really the main earthworks here. We also have some drilled concrete piers. Let's bring back everything. So we can see that that would be showing up in this case here as well. So, oh, where are they? I'm not necessarily seeing them. I think it's actually on another layer combination that is not turned on. So, but that's okay. We don't need to necessarily address those. These are just being priced by linear feet. We have our soldier beam foundations. So those would just be, you know, our kind of cantilevered soldier beams. We are showing them as steel, but those could be timber or a few other types of soldier beams as well. And then, of course, we have our legging here that is essentially holding up our earth on the other side. So we have all these different, you know, elements, and we have them all being reported here under our earthwork. Just to highlight these, actually, let's go back here to our report. You can see that as we select these, you can see that we have our cost codes under 31. So if we pan over here, we can see that we have these tagged by uniformat codes. Essentially all these though are going to be falling underneath our earthwork properties here. So as I select these, you can see that yes, we have these assigned to earthwork, and that's really the, you know, the catch-all in this case for anything earthwork. We will pick it up based off this single code here. So it makes it real nice and easy for us to go through and do these takeoffs. So yeah, we can see our basement backfills, we have our cost codes, and we're looking pretty good here. So one thing that I'm thinking that we definitely want to adjust here is going to be our backfill cost. So this to me seems it would probably be $2 maybe a cubic yard just to put it back in place, but then you're going to have some compaction that is needed. So I would say across the board here we can probably set this something a little bit higher, at least like probably $5 a cubic yard, just to kind of make sure that we are covering it with the compaction. And so let's go ahead and run this and kind of see how we are looking. So next step here would be to obviously just, we're going to, essentially what we'll do is we'll go through and we'll publish this out and then link it into the CONTRABIM Excel estimate template. So let's go ahead and we'll just hit publish here. So to kind of explain how this is getting linked up, over here on the other side in our estimate template, we essentially just link up our published folder here to the location where we are publishing to from Archicad, and then we can go to our specific report here and simply just refresh. So okay, there we go. We can see our cost coming through. We can see our 50 cents a square foot for just our general grading in this case. We call that like kind of fine grading. We have our excavation, which we can see we are at 2,500 to excavate out that basement. That may not be enough. I feel like we might want to go a little bit higher on that. So to make that adjustment, let's come back over here and let's bump this up to maybe $8 a cubic yard. Let's publish and then refresh, and okay, so there we go. We can see our backfill coming through here. So currently we have just $2,000 for our backfill. I'm thinking that needs to go up as well. So we can grab all of these here, just select them in 3D, change these values. Maybe we'll go to $10 a cubic yard. Just want to make sure that we have enough in here. Publish, or refresh. And so we can quickly see how we are making some quick adjustments here. So, okay, then we have our drilled concrete piers, which we are kind of still considering earthwork. We could always move those over to foundations if we wanted. And then we have our soldier beams. So total here being, yeah, 5,000, that's probably plenty. And then let's see, so our total cost here. So we got something going on that's a little bit off here. So I can see our source quantity is set to 1122. So our takeoff here, our area. So this is actually going to be not quite the right value. I can see it's set to area. Perhaps we need to add into this a surface area as part of our takeoff. So these are the takeoffs we're looking for. And so in this case, in our source quantity, if it's an area, we'll go to, I can see we're sending it to R29. Let's see, maybe we can just change this one. Surface area. I can see that it kind of flipped over here, so that's not quite working for us anymore. But now these are correct at least. So with that, we'll kind of flip this around. We want to get that area coming through for our mesh. And so in this case, our source quantity, we need to throw another variable here. So if an area equals mesh, then we want it to be R12. If area equals R12, okay. So in this case, we need to move this one up and we'll just kind of switch it over. So I'm going to cut, get rid of that one. We are going to paste. So if it equals area and M12 equals mesh. Oh, I think we needed to cut something else over here. I think it was this one. Yeah. So we're going to cut. Sorry, this might be a little confusing, but we're just going through and reading through these. So instead of R12, we want this to be U12. And let's see if that works for us. Okay, so that did. So all we did there is we were just moving this up in the sequence and changing this value to be an area over here. So that way we can define that if our unit of takeoff is an area and our type equals a mesh, then we want to go and find our area over here, because it doesn't seem like our surface area for the meshes is necessarily calculating right on that particular one, which is a little bit strange, but it is what it is. So with that, we can take this, double click it down. We can see that this one now has disappeared, but that's okay as well. So I'm okay with that. So, all right, there we go. We have this calculating, so just under 20 grand in this case for our earthwork. So there's a few other things that we can do with this as well. So right now we've just been plugging in these general numbers for our unit cost. We could always go through and just make us, make this a little bit more of a breakdown, where if we actually went in here, we can go in and we have a few additional properties here that we can add. So we could go into our properties. We have under our earthwork, we have like our excavation cost, our haul, our backfill, our compaction, and then an earthwork expression that's going to add all those up. And so let's just check and see about getting this a little bit more dialed in. So we'll start here with our excavation and fill. So we can come over here. Let's call our excavation like $4 a square foot. We can see that our total here is going up. Let's call our haul in this case another $4 a square foot. Sorry, a cubic yard, not a square foot. Okay, so there we go. We can add those up. Down here, we can actually grab, we can grab all of these and highlight them in 3D. And we're going to do this in a similar manner here, but I'm going to grab everything on the interior. And so for our, just because placing this is going to be a little bit more difficult to place this back in here after we've put our basement walls in. So with this, let's go down and let's make some adjustments directly here. So in this case, we're not excavating. We have a little bit of haul here to place it back. So let's call this like, I don't know, maybe $4 a cubic yard. Our backfill could be just like $2 a cubic yard. And then compaction here could be $4 a cubic yard. And then when we run these, we can see that we're at $10 a cubic yard. So I think that's pretty much where we were at before. But that would just give us a little bit more breakdown in this particular case on the perimeter here. So we could do the same thing where our haul could be maybe $4. Our backfill in this case could be like, you know, $3, and then compaction, maybe we're not so strict on this one. And so in this case, maybe we end up at like, what is our total? Okay, well, we're still at 10. A little bit easier to haul. So we can adjust this down. Maybe we'll go with $8 a cubic yard for that one. So we can go in and massage these numbers. And of course, it's always good to work with your subcontractors to get some feedback on these different breakdowns. So by doing this, we can have all these numbers coming through. We're really only going to be applying this to our earthwork in this case. And with that, let's go ahead and we can just publish this out. We can refresh this sheet. We can see that these are already updated, but in this case, we're actually still using our base unit cost. But of course, we can go through and we can reference in our earthwork dollar per volume as another option. So we can always go through here, just highlight this as a, highlight that value, copy it. And based on these formulas over here, we can always just go through and plug this in wherever we want, essentially, as long as we have an open value to use. So in this case, we are using pretty much all of these except for our quantity. We can always go through and just add a new column here though. Add a new row. We'll paste that value, and then I'm just going to take this formula, pull it over, and then I'm just going to double click, and there we can apply that formula. One thing I'll want to do in this case is just make sure that I'm moving my insertion point. So if I'm changing this value here for my insertion, then I just go back to my data sources. I'm just going to change this from W to X. There we go. So that way when we refresh, it's still going to come in the right location. And then over here, I can really see and compare these two. Obviously, they're all the same values, so that's not a big deal. But if we wanted to throw another scenario here for our unit cost, then we got an option. So instead of using this match formula, and right now I'm going to just peel back this if error for the moment so that we just have an index. And so if let's see. Just thinking about a criteria I want to throw at it. So if this value equals the volume, then our unit cost will be from our earthwork. And if that's not true here, we can see that we're in our value of false, then we will do the other. So by doing that, it should have given us this option here. And so now we are picking and choosing between these, and we can tell if that's going to be working for us here. If we say make an adjustment here, say for this particular one, our compaction or our backfill cost needs to be more. So let's change that just to 12. And when we refresh, if we get that coming through, then we know it's working. So let's refresh our sheet. And okay, so now we are actually picking from our correct value here. So, okay, so that's pretty easy. That seems to be working for us. And so yeah, that's probably plenty here on excavation quantities and cost calculations here. So let me know if you have any questions on this at all. We've covered quite a bit here in this video, but hopefully this gives you a good idea kind of how we are setting up some of these reports. So just to kind of do a real quick recap here with this quantification and estimating, the main thing here is to set up a report that has some specific criteria that you can assign your elements to. You just organize these. We're obviously creating these headlines by just turning them on as our first row here. We have some summaries that we've added in here just for our volumes, but none of these will actually be calculated as part of our final cost, but they are useful just as a reference. What else have we done here? So obviously we have some custom properties here to just define what our units of measurement are. You can see how we're using our type in this case to actually go through and for our source quantity based off our unit and our element type, we can determine different takeoff values coming through. And so yeah, that's kind of how this is working. We can quickly add additional factors or additional breakdowns of cost with expressions to get all these to work. Just a real quick point out here how we are calculating these expressions. So under earthwork and volume, or earthwork cost per volume here, all we're doing is just we set this as a number because that's our unit of measurement, and then we simply just go in and we just find our different factors we want to add and we just add them in. So it's quite simple to create these expressions. And so yeah, there we go. So that is quantification and estimating on earthwork here. So if you have any questions, leave it in the comment section, and yeah, we'll come back and do one more here on just how to go through and really dial in some different drawing views to really communicate how we are excavating this site and backfilling this site. And so we'll do one more here on that process. So okay, I'll wrap this one up here and we'll catch you on another video very soon.